Hello, Notre Dame fans. It is a crazy, crazy afternoon and evening for Notre Dame football nation. Brian Kelly is off to LSU to take their open head coaching position, first reported by Pete Thamel of Yahoo Sports.com, and of course, multiple other reports since then. I'm joined by Mike Singer and Tim Hyde. Mike Singer, our recruiting expert for blueandgold.com. Tim Hyde, our resident coach. Please subscribe on our YouTube channel, and you could partake in the comments and ask us a question about all this news that's unfolding. But Mike, I mean, we were just talking. Brian Kelly was visiting recruits on behalf of Notre Dame hours ago, and then this happens. What's going on?
What a freaking day. I've said just in the past couple weeks, whether it's on radio or YouTube, Greg, I'm like, in this line of work that we do, you do not know what is around the corner when you wake up that morning. I mean, I think literally the last thing I would have expected waking up today is Brian Kelly's going to take the LSU job. Just wow. I mean, there's so many different angles to think about it. Like, we thought that, man, CJ Williams, the four-star receiver from Notre Dame, Southern California, him decommitting and flipping USC was Notre Dame's biggest concern right now. That's like 15th on the list of
Yeah.
things you've got to be talking about right now, if not, lower than that. Um, yeah, so I had heard earlier today that Kelly was expected to be at Cooper Flanagan's high school. That is a class of 2023 Notre Dame commits up in the Bay Area. So that's what Notre Dame typically does. They play against Stanford on the road, then they stay out west. He didn't make it to De La Salle, the high school there. I didn't make anything of it at that point. I was like, maybe she had something else. But he did go up to Tobias Merriweather's house tonight, wide receiver commit for the Irish. I was told very soon afterwards, after he left that home visit, is when the news broke. I mean, I don't even know how the Merriweather family's feeling right now. That's a tough spot. Just crazy, Greg. Uh, there's so many different angles to talk about this. Just what a crazy day.
Well, I think the first thing everyone wants to talk about is what is next. I mean, both from an interim standpoint to get through the bowl game, and then who is the next true Notre Dame head football coach. Tim, I know that athletic director Jack Swarbrick has said in past hires that head coaching experience is vital for the Notre Dame position, but we've also seen the past with the hiring of Bob Davie to begin the 1997 season and Charlie Weiss, which was good at first, but neither of those people ended up being successful at Notre Dame. Do you still think they got to go with an experienced head coach, or can someone like Marcus Freeman just be the coach you hire from within?
Well, that's why Dr. Jack gets paid a lot of money. He's gonna make that decision pretty shortly. I would expect. I don't think he's going to sit on his hands and hang out and do multiple interviews and Zoom calls. All great athletic directors, you always hear about them. All great leaders have their little, their short list. And the first thing I thought about when this news broke was Gene Corrigan when he fired Jerry Faust. 24 hours later, he hired Lou Holtz away from Minnesota. He knew who he wanted, and he went out and got him.
Yeah.
And even in the last 24 hours, real quick, obviously with the USC news, the same thing. Oklahoma season ends. The AD at USC, first call he makes was Lincoln Riley, had Lincoln locked up within 24 hours as well. So, yeah, great question about Marcus Freeman. Obviously, this goes back to when he got hired, the recruiting buzz that he's had out there. The defense played its tails off for him. I mean, really for him, the way they played, the interviews went, listening to the players all year long. They fell in love with him, and they played their hearts off, and they had a top 15 defense, basically, when it's all said and done this year. So it is in a different place. When they did hire people without head coaching experience, it was a mess back then. It was. Go ahead, Mike.
I got a question for the panel here, if you will. If you're the committee, and we have so many things I want to talk about, dive into recruiting a little bit. I mean,
Yeah.
there's a ton of good questions in the chat already in comments. What does Goolsby think? We're gonna have a Goolsby show tomorrow. That's gonna be a ton of fun. got to see a comment. Kyle Hamilton and the Inside the Garage podcast is going to be that's going to
That's
be
gonna be hot.
fantastic. Oh man, so tons to talk about. But my first question: if you're the committee, how do you evaluate? I'll kick it to Greg first. How do you evaluate this Notre Dame football team that just lost a head coach? I mean, Greg, I don't. I mean, there's no way for you to have an answer for that. But if
Yeah.
you're on the committee, what do you do?
I mean, so we first talked about how the committee is very unpredictable because they're a group of human beings that changes every year. So, I mean, who knows? I mean, do you penalize the Notre Dame players and what they've accomplished because they don't have a coach? I don't know. I mean, I think if anything, this justifies the idea that the committee has to look harder at what's happened this year and try to make a determination on who they feel are the four best teams. I mean, sometimes you never know. I mean, if Notre Dame says, "Okay, Marcus Freeman's our interim coach," fires up the team gets a little bug under there, you know what, because they're a little ticked off that Brian Kelly left so suddenly. They might go play their best game in the playoffs, and so you don't know. Tim, what do you think, though? I mean, it just seems like a wild thing to consider.
Well, let's just assume tomorrow night Oklahoma State's going to be 5. All right. I mean, they're going to jump them. Obviously they want to do a conference championship. Me and Greg went over this Saturday about the Oklahoma State schedule and Power 5 wins, all that stuff. So let's just assume they're going to do that, which is laughable to begin with, but whatever. And then, craziness happens on Saturday.
Yeah.
Georgia handles business. Does Iowa, pull off an upset? They upset Michigan a couple of years ago. That was one of their few losses when they upset them. Does that happen? And Notre Dame sitting there at 11-1, and they're one of the 4. If they're one of the 4 remaining, they have to go. And you use that term interim. I don't think this is my opinion here. I don't think there's going to be an interim coach. I don't think Notre Dame could have an interim, meaning all these recruits are going to be hanging out. Because if they say the word interim, then that means they're going to hire Luke Fickell. Seriously, because once again, if Luke and Cincinnati get into the Final Four, they take care of business Saturday against Houston. And we're going to name an interim coach. Well, then Luke Fickell's going to do the Final Four, and then they'll hire him afterwards. That I would just throw that out there as an assumption.
Yeah.
But I don't, if they want a guy with head coaching experience, and obviously, don't forget Luke Fickell was the 1-year interim coach before Urban Meyer at Ohio State.
Mm-hmm.
When they got rid of Tressel, so he's got that year under his belt as well. But I mean, it's going to be crowded. Are they going to get penalized? No, because if there is so much chaos on Saturday and they deserve to be number 4, you put them in at 4.
Yeah. To me, as an aside, and you mentioned about this period of having an interim coach, I'd also add that with signing day and the early signing period now being December 15th, I think that A, plays into Notre Dame having to really figure it out quickly, A, and then B, why Brian Kelly didn't wait another week to take the LSU job. I mean, LSU's probably, how much of that money that they're paying him is put on like a value play on thinking if we get Brian Kelly, we get Walker Howard, the 5-star quarterback, on signing day. And let's get that done now. What do you think, Mike?
I think Walker Howard's going to stick regardless who the coach is. He was just, Howard was there for the USC game, so he was meeting with Brian Kelly. So that familiarity obviously really helps him trying to stick with LSU. That already knows his new coach. Of course, Walker Howard, 5-star quarterback commit that LSU was trying to or Notre Dame was trying to flip. As far as the signing day, the first thing is the timing of the hire for Notre Dame. When can they get that new hire? If it's Marcus Freeman, which there's a lot of people pushing for Freeman to be the guy. And, I was a little bit surprised that all the media was just like, having their public outpour of support. I even threw in a tweet there as well that I think Freeman would do a great job. He's obviously the best choice for like immediate results of this recruiting class, but you can't make a hire based on that. So if you're Jack Swarbrick and you don't think Freeman's the guy, like you can't hire him just to salvage a recruiting class and a half. You got to look at this as a 10-year, investment. With that being said, I do think Freeman would do a phenomenal job. I think the three names that you definitely have to talk about, Tim, Luke Fickell.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's, 1A, 1B guy. Marcus Freeman. He doesn't have the experience, but I mean, he's a darn good football coach. And Matt Campbell. I don't know how you feel about that. And then do we throw out, Urban Meyer? I don't know, Tim. What do you think?
Urban Meyer and John Gruden. We got to get those two names in. But Urban Meyer would obviously would be unbelievable. But would he even consider leaving Jacksonville? And then the fiasco he had, during the bye week and all that coming out.
I think the issue might be from Notre Dame's end there too. I don't
Yeah,
know.
exactly. And Urban Meyer's a great coach, but obviously wherever he's been, he's always left a little tainted as well out there.
Right.
But no, the candidates, real quick. I saw one of the comments down below comparing Marcus Freeman to Bob Davie. Two completely different people. Lou Holtz really did not push Bob Davie back then. That was the athletic director back then, Mike Wadsworth, who hired Bob Davie. It was Davie, Gary Barnett at Northwestern, and Dave Wanstead, who was the coach at the Chicago Bears, were the final three back then. And that was more of a Notre Dame in-house, not a Lou Holtz, hey, I'm leaving, please hire him. I think completely different situation with Marcus Freeman. You've heard him speak and the way he talks, the way recruits talk about him. He's unbelievable. He really is. He's got something about him, that's going back to who he was in high school, 5-star, played at the high level, little NFL experience, all those things. And he's jumped into recruiting, jumped into coaching. Wherever he's been a star. So go from there. Luke Fickell's got to be up there, number one, as Mike just said, which is obvious. Look what he's done at Cincinnati, taking over for Tuberville. And the Matt Campbell thing, my thing on Matt Campbell is that they were preseason the pick this year, right?
Yeah.
They were
Every year.
What's that?
Every year.
Every
It's
year.
every year.
He's lost a
at Iowa
lot of
State?
games. I mean, it's not like they're going 11-1 every year. And he brought a good Iowa State game into that champion or the bowl game against Notre Dame a couple years ago, and they got smoked. I mean, they were physically overwhelmed by Notre Dame in that game.
The thing about Iowa State this year is obviously they had this huge senior class. They were the favorites to win the Big 12, and they went 7-5.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And he relies a lot on transfers, like not
Yes.
grad transfers, just transfers. And that's another topic we could talk about is the need potentially for Notre Dame to evolve more into the transfer portal. You don't have to be a graduate transfer portal, and getting kids that maybe have the transcripts or have kept up their schoolwork at another college, because otherwise that's something where the way Iowa State and Matt Campbell's built his roster doesn't fit with how Notre Dame does stuff.
Hey, Greg, I wanted to make a comment, Greg, because we did a recruiting video today, of course, right before the news breaks.
I got it up before it broke. Had a bad feeling.
Yeah, so we talked about, kind of the differences between Notre Dame and Oklahoma, and you made a great point. Like, kids decommit from Oklahoma, it's because of a coaching change.
Yeah.
Like, those kids commit to Oklahoma because of fit in for the team and because of the coaching staff. A lot of these kids commit to Notre Dame first because of academics and second tradition or flip-flopped.
Mm-hmm.
Nolan Ziegler, Joey Tanona. I mean, some of these, Josh Burnham, I would even put in that category.
Yep.
These are going to be vocal guys, and it doesn't matter if the head coach is Brian Kelly, Luke Fickell, or Tim Hyde. They're going to remain strongly committed to the Fighting Irish. Yep, throw Tim Hyde on the coaching hot boards. You heard it here first.
I think Tim Hyde's more likely than Urban Meyer, but here's some food for thought. I don't think this is
real quick.
Go ahead.
Real quick, guys. Just to go off that, that's a great point. What Mike just said. I mean, Notre Dame recruits, when an assistant leaves, people panic, but they stay because it's Notre Dame. They've had coaches leave in the past. People panic, recruits stay. One of the most famous ones was after Charlie Weiss got fired, and Louis Nix commits without a coach because he wanted to go to Notre Dame. And Notre Dame is different. A lot of these decommits we've seen with Oklahoma is they're just going there to Oklahoma, play, have a shot at the NFL. I mean,
Yep.
two different, it's night and day when you go to academics to begin with. The graduation rates between Oklahoma, you can't even compare some of these schools out there. That it's mind blowing when you look at these things, because some guys do pick it. Oh, I'm just going to Oklahoma for the offense,
Right.
and that same is going to happen now with SC. Guys are going to go there just for the offense, and a little selfishness starts to pop in. Where at Notre Dame, they're going to Notre Dame, like Mike said earlier. The next coach they're going to hire, that was a great thing Mike said. It's a 10-year commitment. Whoever you're going to put on that dotted line, you want him for 10 years minimum.
Yeah.
And it's the same
Yeah.
with these players, that 40-year decision. And that's going back real quick to the summers. Some of the interviews Marcus Freeman did, where he bought into that 4 for 40 mentality and whatnot. He really preaches that when he talks. So it's going to be interesting if he's the one.
One other thing about Oklahoma, and I'm actually going to give some credence to this comment below, but on Oklahoma, the other thing I worry about for their program is they rely so much on getting Texas talent, and now you're going to have the two Texas big boys in the SEC. We saw what going to the SEC did for Texas A&M recruiting.
Yep.
I think it's possible that does the very same thing for Texas recruiting. They go to another level. If Oklahoma, I know they're going to the SEC as well, but all of a sudden, where's their angle? I just think I could just see recruiting getting a little harder for Oklahoma. It's something that they're going to have to watch out for. We have people in our comments saying Notre Dame must hit a home run. I think Oklahoma's got to hit a home run too with their hire. Saban for head coach. That's my first phone call. He's a devout Catholic. Why not?
Yep.
Why not? He's not going to, obviously, he's not going to leave Alabama, but you swing for the fences. And I said this to my buddies. I've said it even on our forum at blueandgold.com. If there's any doubt that Nick Saban is not the greatest head football coach in college football history, you can eliminate that doubt by winning a national championship at the University of Notre Dame. And so that would be my phone call to Nick Saban. I'd say, do you really for sure want to be the greatest? And he may not care, right? But if he's like, I'm a little bugged by the fact that there's some other people who are often named in that discussion. You say, well, come win a championship at Notre Dame, and the discussion's over.
Hey, the thing real quick there about with Saban you mentioned is statues. I've been to the University of Alabama for some spring football clinics and stuff like that in the past. They put statues out just like Notre Dame does. I don't know any other programs out there that put statues out when you win, and those are two programs. That's a great point. Hey, devout Catholic, tell Miss Terry because you have some lakefront property right there on the campus. Yeah. He likes to go boating. I don't know if boats are allowed on the Notre Dame lake there on campus.
We have some people commenting, and it's hard for us to verify. I know, Mike, you were looking a little bit, but we have some people saying that word's getting out that Marcus Freeman is named as the next coach.
Former Notre Dame running back, walk-on Mick Asaf has tweeted out that per his sources, Marcus Freeman will be the next head coach at the University of Notre Dame. I don't know if that's just throwing some crap on the wall and seeing if it sticks, or I don't know. I would personally, I would wait to see if some of those national media outlets who have been all over this, if they report the same thing. But
yeah,
I would not be surprised. Look, I've been talking to people all night. I'm sorry if I'm looking down a lot at my phone. Yeah. Because I am. I got people texting me, and my phone has never blown up this much. But yeah, Freeman wants the job for sure. The irony in this is he turned down LSU for Notre Dame. He really wants to build something here at Notre Dame. It's just kind of going to be one of those things. I just don't think he's going to be the number one candidate. I think they're going to make some calls to Luke Fickell or maybe Nick Saban first.
Yeah, and it just we have some people kind of ribbing us talking about Saban too long. I was just for fun. If you gave me a probability chart, Nick Saban would be at 0%. But I do think I would not blame Notre Dame for making the phone call. I think they should make the phone call.
You have to.
He's the best in the business. Do it.
There's a group of 5 or 6 coaches. Like if you're a USC or a Notre Dame or an Alabama or Georgia and you have an opening, there's a group of coaches you just have to call and you make them say no.
Yeah.
And this is something that Joel Klatt actually came out with when the USC coach came open. Brian Kelly was on that list. He had, let's see, I think he had Dabo, Nick
Yeah, Dabo.
Saban. There was just like the no-brainers. You call them. Like, what do you have to lose?
Right. And listen, I mean, and we don't know Nick Saban personally. It's reported that he's a devout Catholic, but you certainly don't want the guy writing an autobiography when he's 80 saying, my one regret in life was not being the head football coach at the nation's leading Catholic university.
There you go.
Because you would be like, oh man, like what? Couldn't we've gotten that done? But again, that's just for fun talk. Go ahead, Tim.
Well, let's take a pause here. If it is free, let's say it's Marcus Freeman. Who are the last few colleges that have hired guys that are just fresh out of college, so to speak? I mean, Oklahoma got Lincoln Riley. He was coaching at East Carolina. Who would have ever thought a guy at East Carolina goes to OU? Bob Stoops, loved Bob Stoops out there at Oklahoma. Everyone in Oklahoma loves him. The guy still has an office on campus. Hires him, who was just at East Carolina just 2 years, a few years earlier. Ryan Day, same thing. Urban Meyer leaves. He goes right to Gene Smith, who's a Notre Dame alum. The AD at Ohio State says, hire Ryan Day. Go back to Dabo. I mean, there's Dabo at Clemson. Obviously Clemson, comparing Clemson to Notre Dame with the media and stuff like that night and day. But they hired Dabo, and look what he did. Young, energetic, wide receiver coach, not even a coordinator. And look what he's done. So the key, and this will go back to Mike, is recruiting.
Yeah.
It's online. It's the buzz. It's the edits, all the photo. It's all the fluff. And for whatever, and Marcus Freeman seems to have it. And at Notre Dame, you have to recruit 50 states. You do. You have to recruit 50 states. You just don't have a little pub, a little spot, so to speak. And Marcus Freeman, I think it will give his wife a kiss on the cheek and say, sweetie, I'll be back. I'm going to be gone for 30 days. I'll see you when I'm back. And that's the type of guy that's going to go out there and get these bodies all over the place. You just know he will.
Yep. There's a strong correlation between national championships and number one recruiting classes, by the way, and that's where Notre Dame ultimately needs to get toward. And yeah, I mean, I agree that the hiring of Marcus Freeman, I think there's no setback for Notre Dame when it comes to recruiting, as long as he gets a good staff around him.
Yeah. Okay. I want to get back to that point first. I think we're at an all-time high of concurrent viewers on our YouTube show. So
I got 815.
Appreciate everyone watching live with us. Make sure you hit the thumbs up on this video. Go to blueandgold.com. At the top of the site, it says sign up for our free newsletter. I believe it's in the description of this video as well. So please do that. Whenever Notre Dame does make their next hire, we will send out an email blast to you right away so you can get the news. Okay, you mentioned the staff around him. What about the staff that potentially goes to LSU?
Yeah.
I think, guys like Polian, Elston, these long-time Kelly guys. Does Marcus Freeman, if he doesn't get the Notre Dame job, does he go to LSU? Rees, I mean, I don't know, but I could see a lot of these guys going to LSU because if they're not getting upgrades at Notre Dame, well, where else are you going to go? LSU and get a raise with the guy that you've worked for.
Mm-hmm. What's the most stabilizing force? Or go ahead, Tim.
No, I was going to say, well, let's talk about the opposite of that. If Marcus Freeman gets the job, from hearing what Brian Kelly talks about, the first guy is I would assume Marcus Freeman hires is Mike Elston. It seems like they've worked hand in hand in game plannings this year. Mm-hmm. When you hear the reports and you hear what Brian Kelly said, so and Elston's been turned down a few times by Brian Kelly for some promotion, so to speak. So, and he's been with Brian Kelly forever. Does he say, I'm going to stay at Notre Dame. I'm going to have my family make the sack bags, keep those going for Marcus Freeman and stay. Maybe he's the DC. So
I doubt that. I doubt that.
You think Elston would go to LSU?
I don't think Elston would stay at Notre Dame in that scenario. Okay. Personally, I mean, maybe if he gets the DC gig, but I mean, it'll be Freeman's show, on the
Yeah.
I just personally don't see that in reading between the lines. But yeah, if Freeman's the guy. He's keeping Mickens, obviously. He'll be the linebackers. Not the linebackers coach. He'll still have a strong hand in that. He'll go find a good linebackers coach. I think Chris O'Leary would stay. He seems to really mesh with those defensive guys. The offensive staff, I would.
Change.
I think the one guys, we're totally speculating here right now.
Mm-hmm.
I think there would be a decent chance, and I'm speculating plus reading in between the lines from what I hear. I think John McNulty would be a decent chance that he gets bumped up to offensive coordinator. But otherwise, I think maybe Lance Taylor, offensive coordinator. That would be another possibility. But otherwise, I think it would be a totally different offensive staff, which it's funny. I've been saying a lot that I'm expecting offensive staff changes because this group has been in place for a couple years now. Since the departure of Chip Long, I was like, they're just due for an offensive staff change.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I wasn't expecting it to be Brian frickin' Kelly, but here we are, Greg.
Yeah. Question from Jeff Harner. Do you pick up the phone and call big game Bob Stoops? I'm first off surprised that he is going to be the interim coach at Oklahoma. I just thought he looked pretty good on TV on the Fox show for their game day show, and now all of a sudden he's back in the coaching mix.
I'll answer that first.
Sure,
no.
Go ahead. Yeah.
No, you don't call him. He's been out of it 5 years.
Yeah.
The big game, I think that was 2000 when he beat Chris Weinke. That was a long time ago.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't know about the big game Bob Stoops. That was his mantra in his early years. But no, I would not call Bob Stoops. I wouldn't. There's too many other names out there. Unless you're going to do Bob Stoops and he's just going to be the figurehead. And he has had some amazing assistants. Look at all his assistants to become head coaches over the years. So
Yeah.
Is he going to be one of those guys? But he's an Ohio guy, Midwestern ties, all those things. I would not call him. I even saw someone comment down below about Kirk Ferentz. No, Kirk Ferentz is not. He's never going to leave Iowa.
Yeah, he would have been long gone if he was ever interested in leaving Iowa. I think there was a long time period there where he was mentioned on hot boards and whatnot for various positions just because of his consistent success at Iowa. So, Mike, go ahead.
Greg, speaking of hot boards, if you go to blueandgold.com, Patrick Engel and Greg Ladky posted theirs. So some really good names on there. I want to throw out some names that are on there. And again, go to blueandgold.com to read the full one. Jeff Brom, we haven't talked about him. Greg, I believe you mentioned him as someone we wanted to add on there. Tell us about Brom. Why is he on there?
Well, I just thought, he's been, I think, more successful at Purdue than one would think. I don't know if he's got the recruiting chops, but he played football at Louisville Trinity, a big Catholic high school in Louisville. He's got a lot of head coaching experience. In terms of his time at West Kentucky, then at Purdue, was an assistant under Petrino at Louisville, I believe. So he's just a guy I think that overall is a good coach, big football family, obviously. I thought that more along like the regional lines. Like at first I was thinking, wow, this is such a shock to Notre Dame, Brian Kelly leaving. And again, because of the timing with recruiting and signing day and the playoffs, like Notre Dame's they're going to have to move fast. I mean, I feel like this is not something that's going to drag out for more than a handful of days, maybe. I mean, maybe they do interim and then get through the game, but I wouldn't put him high on like the possibility scale, but he is someone that's in state that I think overall has done a good job as a head coach. Go ahead, Mike.
Let me just mention real quick for Tim. You give your comments. Bruce Feldman did tweet about an hour ago. There are expectations that Luke Fickell will be in the mix for this job if Notre Dame can wait out a potential playoff run by Cincinnati. But right now it's Freeman and the other Notre Dame staffers who have been left to talk recruits off the ledge with the Kelly situation and maybe coach Notre Dame in the college football playoff. So just want to mention that real quick.
Cool insight from Tim Myers. Go ahead.
No, I was going to say on Brom, I mean, the guy's got 4 or 5 top 5 victories over his time at Purdue. I mean, he's been the ultimate spoiler maker at Purdue, which doesn't have the facilities, the high end recruiting and stuff like that. The guy could obviously coach. He could coach. He put together a game plan. We don't follow him on the national recruiting scale, but it's Notre Dame. I mean, guys can recruit at Notre Dame. I mean, Willingham had a great class until he, hit the golfing links for a couple of years. But Bob Davie recruited. Weiss had unbelievable recruiting classes. So Notre Dame is Notre Dame. They're the gold standard. I mean, they really are. They're up there. They're a blue blood. So Jeff Brom would be unbelievable because he can coach. He's a really good football coach.
Yeah. What do you all would think about Matt Rule? Just because he popped up on some list for the LSU job, and he's comfortable in the NFL, right? The Panthers, I think, are around 500. I haven't looked lately, even though I live in Charlotte. But he did a great job at Temple. He rehabs programs really well, but Notre Dame's not in need of a rehab.
That's it. That's
Yeah.
it. I think Marcus Freeman would do well in that because he doesn't need to build it. He just needs to sustain it,
Mm-hmm.
and then kind of take it to the next level. Like he doesn't have to rehab it. Yeah, like you said, Tim.
Yeah. Yeah. When I think of Matt Rule, I just think of a guy showing up every day in sweats. And I'm like, seriously, I do. I mean, that's literally the picture of Matt Rule. So, no, I don't want Matt Rule out there representing Notre Dame. That's just me. Plus, he's a Penn State guy. So, you don't want him out there. I see Dan Mullen. No, no,
But
no.
but before he took the Florida job, this would have been a
Oh,
name way up there. Was Dan Mullen bad at Florida because of Dan Mullen, or was Dan Mullen bad at Florida because Florida schools have a problem? If you've got a bunch of kids from Florida on your roster right now, you're not good.
uh, let me take that. The
I
guy
mean,
was in the SEC. The
is
guy
that
was in
not
the
the
SEC
truth?
champion. He was in the SEC championship game last year. All right, he was one play away from beating Alabama this year. So obviously the guy can coach. I don't think there's something in the water, but it could be him. It could be him as well. And let's don't forget he was a GA. With Urban Meyer back in when Meyer was here with Bob Davie back at in the Notre Dame days. But yeah, I'm me personally. I'm just not a Dan Mullen guy.
Once again, hit like on this video, subscribe to our YouTube channel so you can partake in the comments, ask us a question. We actually had a super chat just come through. Thank you for that. We're always open to that as well. I'll try to dig that up here. Here it is. And we're actually, Mike, you mentioned our concurrence earlier. Thank you, everyone. We are above 1,000 people currently watching this live. That is a record for our YouTube channel here at blueandgold.com. But we're gonna address the super chat here from Chris Evans. He said just got here, and that's okay. Many people just got here. Not sure if you already covered this. Seems to me Tommy Rees was always the heir apparent. Does he have a shot here, and does he have the recruiting chops? I'll let both of you guys answer that.
Yeah, I'll go first. Okay. Seemed to me. Let me address all of it. Seemed to me Reese was the heir apparent. I actually agree with that. Like I kind of felt like more so about a year and some change that Reese was kind of being groomed by Kelly, who is now kind of fading into the twilight of his career. That his quarterback from the early 2010s would be the guy. That's what I thought was possible. Does he have a shot here? I don't think so. Does he have the recruiting chops? I don't think so. I think he's a fine recruiter, but he's not for everybody. I think to be the face of the program, I just don't think he's at that point right now. I mean, 5 years ago, he was an analyst with the Chargers. I think 5 years ago, Freeman was a DC at Purdue under Brom, I want to say. I mean, it's at a different point. I think Tommy Rees will be a head coach soon.
Mm-hmm.
I just think that's way too soon. I mean, he's my age. I
Yeah,
mean,
he's super young.
he's a young cat. So, and Freeman, I believe, is 35 or 36. Tim?
Yeah, ditto what Mike just said.
Yeah.
I think he really was the heir apparent. The guy who played there. All the stuff Mike said, the same type of thing. But when this news broke tonight, the first thing I thought about, like I said earlier, was Gene Corrigan when he hired Lou Holtz immediately. Is Dr. Jack going to do the same type of thing? Get this out of the way immediately. This is the face of Notre Dame football. And then I started thinking about Mike in recruiting. Who is the guy that you want in a quarterback's living room talking? That's to me personally, that's the bottom line. Notre Dame. I started thinking about Holtz and all in this era of the '80s and the '90s. Just go on Wikipedia and look at how many Notre Dame quarterbacks were in the NFL back then, in the '80s and the '90s, everywhere. Now look at NFL rosters. It's what Ian Book, and they're playing a running back over him at quarterback in the NFL. Notre Dame needs quarterback. We've talked about this 100 million times. Who is the guy that is in the room that is going to go get, the Walker Howards, those 5-star, those guys? Notre Dame has not had one since Jimmy Clausen. It has been that long. And when you're at Notre Dame, I mean, it's Notre Dame. Yeah. They need to go get that guy. Nothing against Angeli and other guys they have there, but they need to go do that to get to that upper level, that next level that Mike just talked about.
So, Tim,
go ahead, Mike.
Let me respond real quick. I mean, Rees has been the quarterback's coach for a few years, and he hasn't gotten the guy. What yes. I don't know what change him being the head coach would make for that.
Exactly. That's why I'm saying I don't think he's the head coach. I don't think he's the guy.
Okay, sorry. I picked up the end of your talk there. So I missed that part. I thought you were saying that he should be because he's
no. And that's if you're gonna go, if you're gonna go Rees, who we figured was that the next man in, so to speak, and then as Marcus Freeman comes in here, who do you want in the living room talking to? These quarterbacks that are going to be coming up in the next 18 months that Mike is talking about all the time on Blue and Gold. Who do you want talking to those guys? I mean, there's some amazing quarterbacks out there in the next 2 classes that Notre Dame is on. Rees has started that stuff, but isn't Marcus Freeman? If you're going to go Marcus Freeman, isn't that the guy you want talking to those parents? He just seems like it just falls off of him when he's talking. Like parents are just going to fall in love with him.
I posted this from Leo. A good point. I thought about this today when it started breaking. Was man. Did they know about this all along when Brian Kelly referenced, and it was he said it was all taken out of context, but talking about Marcus Freeman being the next head coach in response to an answer about minority candidates, and it did sound like he was talking about Notre Dame, and Brian Kelly was basically forced to correct it to some extent, but I thought about this, like what if this was some deal that was already understood in August or September?
If that's accurate, that would I had a lot of people lying to me then recently. I can't I don't buy it. I don't buy that. But like I said, Freeman wants the job. Nick Asaf is reporting it. I don't know how reliable of a source that is, but we will see, my friends.
But hey, let me bounce off of that. So that it was that when Kelly obviously said that it was taken out of context according to Kelly. But since Freeman's been there, and Mike would know better than anyone with recruiting and talking to all these recruits and families that you do, Mike. I mean Freeman. He's been there since January, right? Middle of January, end of January, whenever it was that he got officially hired. I mean he's hit the ground running and has never stopped. It seems like. Mm-hmm. So, maybe Brian Kelly saw that and says, man, this is the guy that needs to do it. And plus Brian Kelly, just turned 60. He's always been looking around. No matter what he says, he always seems to be looking around. Yeah. You turn on NFL Game Day on Sundays, his name's always mentioned. That's probably more his agent always trying to get something. And, it's always been rumored. But it always seems like Brian Kelly's always throwing his name out there a ton.
Yeah. Well, I think the agents drive the news, the breaking news quite a bit here, and then also they're driving the salaries up too. Mike, you were about to say something.
Yeah. I lost my train of thought though. So Greg, I will
Well, let me pitch this to you in your experience of covering recruiting. It's a good question that's always there for Notre Dame from John Notestein is they're not getting the guy. I think he means like a great head coach because of academic standards. This has to be a prime reason Kelly is headed to the SEC. This is John's comment. What do you think about that, Mike? I mean, certainly Notre Dame head coaches have to work hard. There's no doubt, and the pool is smaller.
Yeah, well, I should kind of remember my thought here, which ties into this. I mean, Kelly went out and hired Freeman, that competitive battle with LSU. Again, ironic. Because he wanted to go out of his comfort zone. He didn't want to promote an Elston or a Terry Joseph, and like he wanted that splash hire. And it's just like the timing of this is just so bizarre. Why now? The 2021 recruiting class, all these freshmen, Blake Fisher, Joe Alt, hashtag Joe Alt fan club, Lorenzo Styles, like Tyler Buckner. You got all these guys. Like, why now? 2022 class, in my opinion, is even better than 21. The 23 class, like, just why now? And it might be he just doesn't believe in LSU, or excuse me, in Notre Dame. And if it's a money thing, Greg, I mean, it's gotta. I mean, I've never walked a day in Brian Kelly's shoes. Like, I can't know. But if I were him, it's like, how much money do I have? It's in a legacy play now, right? I mean,
Yeah.
the difference between $3 million a year when I have, crazy net worth, it's a legacy thing, and you just pissed off, any Notre Dame fan who supported you. I mean, it's just bizarre. So be looking forward to watching his opening press conference. I don't know if I answered any of that question, but those are my thoughts.
Well, go ahead, Tim.
I mean, just real quick. I mean, just now we're getting into the pissed off part of this, which is I think great, because he literally bailed on Notre Dame. I mean, seriously, he's in a recruits class, or excuse me, his home. Bails has been recruited, that he's building like the biggest mansion in northern Indiana that has been going on. He's comfortable. He's getting ready to go there. He wants a statue. All those things. LSU. I mean, if you have a statue at LSU, who's going to go there? The people in Louisiana. You get a statue at Notre Dame, people travel to take a picture at that thing. But Mike says, why does he leave with the recruits and stuff like that? Could be. It could be it's easy at LSU. I mean, you get transfers. All you need is the NCAA clearinghouse standards is 2.2. As long as you have a 2.2 GPA in your core classes, you could get into any school. Notre Dame's a little bit higher. Maybe he's just like, I'm going to take the $100 million, and that's the splash higher.
And who wouldn't want to have a statue next to Ed Orgeron for eternity? Mike, go ahead.
What school has Kelly not been able to beat? You just can't beat them to get over that hump. Tim, what's the school?
Not LSU. He's beat him twice.
Alabama.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, it's Alabama.
You know who he has to play every damn year now?
Yes. In November, after the bye. It's a bye week, and it's Alabama, and then they get their cupcake 1AA. So that's the schedule.
I don't think this is going to work. I've seen a ton of tweets about Brian Kelly, and this is just a weird fit. I saw something like, what's more of a weird fit for Brian Kelly to Baton Rouge, Louisiana, Chip Kelly to Mississippi State? That might be more of an odd fit. I don't buy it. I mean, has he ever recruited in the South? Like, coached in the South? Like,
no, he's never coached south of the Mason-Dixon line. I mean, someone tweeted that tonight, which is true. I mean, look at his background. He never. I mean, he's a Boston guy. He's from Boston. Went to Assumption College, a little D2 in Worcester. And he's going to coach in Baton Rouge. So obviously the talent pool is loaded. He doesn't have to go far, drive into Houston, steal a couple guys here and there, and load up. So it's going to be easier. He's going to be the figurehead. He's going to be Les Miles. He's going there to be Les Miles. Will he wear the hat like Les and have all that? He's going to have assistants around him. They're going to run the show. Brian Kelly's going to go to all the Cajun feedings and just hang out. And he's not going to leave the state. But that's going back real quick to some of the issues way back when with Brian Kelly. Before the 2.0 Brian Kelly, was he hated going to the blue and gold, or the alumni things. Excuse me, all the Notre Dame alumni associations. My wife, who's an alum, was part of the Notre Dame Los Angeles Alumni Association for 5-6 years. She was on the board and everything, and they would run these things and have all these events. They tried getting Brian Kelly for years. He said no. And they finally got him out just a couple of years ago. I think that was after 2017. They finally got him. It was right after 2017 season. They finally got him out there. And this is Los Angeles. And he hated going to those. He showed up, talked. Everyone tried saying hi, and he was gone in 5 minutes. God's honest truth. Gone in 5 minutes after he talked. So he didn't like doing those things. And, kind of probably just didn't want to do it. Louisiana, you got a tiny state. He only has to do a couple of them.
Mike Frosalone, thank you for the super chat. We're open to those. Keep them coming, everyone. Thank you so much. He says this is the first ND coach to leave for another school in nearly 100 years. I was trying to think of anyone in my lifetime. That's got to be true. I mean, I don't have the media guy in front of me, but certainly wouldn't be surprised.
Lambo? Is it clearly Lambo?
Yeah. Could be. Is this, and I should know that then because I'm from Wisconsin and a Packer fan, but is this a big hit to ND's credibility with recruits, donors, insiders, etc.? Also, how does Singer wear purple tonight? Mike, are you wearing the same shirt? I'm wearing the same shirt that we had on recording the recruiting show, but all this happened like as I was publishing that, and I had no chance to change my shirt. Were you wearing that same shirt?
Yes. This is blue.
Twice purple.
This is blue, Mike. I promise.
It's the lighting. Yeah, it's the lighting.
I wouldn't know. Wow.
We're all wearing blue. Yeah, we're all wearing blue. As far as the credibility hit, no. Just no.
There's going to be some sort of explanation. I think that makes more sense. Like maybe he might burned out. He might have been. I think I think at Notre Dame especially. There's places where like in Alabama or in LSU where the coach gets kind of an open checkbook to a lot of extent for facilities upgrades or this, that, or the other, and Notre Dame might be the kind of play. I mean, I think I know they're the type of place that there's a lot more potential for pushback on that sort of stuff, and maybe he got upset with that sort of thing. I mean, who knows? I mean, it's a tough place to be at for longer than he was. I mean, he was in his 12th season, right? So.
Yeah, let me answer that real quick, Greg. You mentioned that was reported by I think it was Pete Thamel possibly yesterday, where his name was just rumored. And one of the first things that was posted was Brian Kelly's looking for this. One of his big concerns is he wants to upgrade the Goog. He thinks it needs to be more modern and things of that nature. So they're like, oh, there's Brian Kelly trying to use his agent to get more things for Notre Dame, but. I mean, Notre Dame's got facilities. Notre Dame's building unbelievable facilities. Yeah. Unbelievable facilities. They're building things all the time out there, and I don't think money's an issue for Notre Dame this day and age at all. If you need it, they're going to build it. And real quick, talking about donors and insiders, I think the donors are going to be hyped up to help out whoever gets hired.
Yeah.
To help that guy win a national title, because Brian Kelly just left after 12 years. He had 3 legitimate shots, didn't win it. I think the donors are going to be like, Kelly just bailed because he thinks LSU's easier. What do you need? And let's go get it.
Yeah, that's what happened. And to couple on that is this. I mean, this job is way more attractive than it was when Notre Dame hired Brian Kelly and when Notre Dame hired both Tyrone Willingham and Charlie Weiss. I mean, I think that they are way more likely to get candidate A with the state of their program than they were 10, 15 years ago. Mike?
I did see a tweet by Football Scoop that was very much along those lines. I should have let you finish while I pull up the tweet because it was really good. Here's what it said from Football Scoop. I received a lot of texts today about the LSU gig. Have already received more about Notre Dame. Huge, in all caps, interest in that one. That's what Football Scoop tweeted. So I think that has to be like one of the most attractive jobs to open up in a while. I mean, Notre Dame, place the programs at, Tim.
Well, I mean, perfect. I mean, you're going to have you're going to have Goolsby on tomorrow night. So Goolsby was there with Bob Davie. What'd they go 5-7? Bob Davie's last year, he was 5-7. Willingham comes in. Obviously, they have the great 0-2 season and whatnot. So, Mike, I mean, Goolsby's going to be perfect to talk about that transition tomorrow night with him and where the program was. I mean, they got rid of Davie after 5 years, and it was time to move on. He wasn't doing anything, and the comparison is out there with Freeman and Bob Davie. I'm telling you guys, no. It is not comparable at all. All right. I've been following Notre Dame forever. It's not comparable. 2 different dudes, 2 different guys on the recruiting. Bob Davie was all about Texas, Texas, Texas. Goolsby will probably talk about that tomorrow night. He loved to recruit Texas and things of that nature. He was not a dynamic, guy to go on the roast beef circuit and talk. I think Marcus Freeman is going to be that guy if he's hired.
Hit like on this video, subscribe to our YouTube channel. Please seek out our free newsletter. It's all over blueandgold.com. Any content item you go into, you'll see a plea to sign up for our newsletter. It's free. You'll keep up to date on everything that's going on, and there's a lot that's going on, obviously, so it'll be a busy time. Yeah, Mike, I mean, I saw some other questions. I mean, maybe you want to give a stab at this, but you mentioned C.J. Williams was already on the decommit watch list because of the hiring of Lincoln Riley at USC, but anyone else just top of mind right away you're thinking, this is really going to hurt them? And let's just say like Notre Dame does at least name Freeman interim coach, and there's some stability. Who do you think right now is like really tied to Brian Kelly?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know if if Marcus Freeman's named interim coach, then, I mean, that doesn't mean anything. Someone's going to be interim. Yeah. But if he's named permanent coach, I think that helps with a lot of guys. I don't know if there's Brian Kelly. I'm going to try to phrase this correct. I don't know if Brian Kelly leaving for LSU is the game changer. It's more of the assistants that go. I mean, no, I don't think there's one recruit who picked Notre Dame because of Brian Kelly. It's because of, again, academics, Notre Dame's history and tradition, and then relationship with assistant coach. I don't think like Kelly is more of the closer or the guy you meet with on your visits, get a text message from here and there, and you call them to commit. I get so it's more about the assistants who leave, and also the coaches from other schools who now have the opportunity to try to flip you because of this change in the assistant coach leaving. So yeah, if Freeman stays and that defensive staff stays mostly intact, I think you're keeping everyone. Like even maybe Tyson Ford, if Elston were to go, I could see that. But Marcus Freeman is, I think the main reason why he initially committed to Notre Dame in January. So, offensively, I think C.J. Williams is likely gone. Amarion Walker, probably gone. Tobias Merriweather, probably a coin flip. I like both of Notre Dame's tight end commits to stay. And again, this is speculation at this point. Like, I'm not contacting recruits right now. Like, I want to let them breathe and process a little bit. Running back Jadarian Price, no idea. Steve Angeli, imagine that he would be. I think he's locked in with Notre Dame. I keep seeing comments about my shirt. Guys, it's blue, but I'm going to go change it. All right?
All right. Well, then I'll pitch this to Tim Hyde. Super chat. Thank you, Matt Brady. If they don't hire Marcus Freeman, Notre Dame, if they don't hire Marcus Freeman, does he stay? I'll have a quick answer to that. Remember, he was the most sought-after defensive coordinator candidate in the nation not even 12 months ago. There's going to be money out there for that guy if he does not want to stay.
Oh, without a doubt. I mean, does he stay? I mean, for who? Let's just throw out some names. We were talking about earlier. If it's Luke Fickell, Luke Fickell's his guy. Luke Fickell was his position coach at Ohio State.
But does he want to work for him again?
Exactly. But Cincinnati's open. So does Cincinnati go and hire him?
That's true.
To come in. So, I want to comment on Mike, but I just won't, because that is very USC-ish.
Yeah.
It's not good. It's not good.
Or Oklahoma.
You comment all the time how I just wear the same collared shirts. It's because there's a guest bed right next to my desk here, and there's just shirts that I only wear for live shows, and that's about it.
I hear you.
Yes, if Fickell chooses Notre Dame, I would be stunned if Freeman stays with the Fighting Irish. I think he would probably take that Cincinnati job.
Yeah. Interesting thing to speculate here. If ND was 12-0 and had beat Cincinnati, do you think Kelly waits for his announcement or leaves like he ghosted Cincinnati before? And I'll add 12-0 and in the playoff.
The ghosted thing, by the way, I love that comment.
Or the Irish goodbye.
Yeah, I mean, seriously. Yeah, the Irish goodbye. I saw someone posted the ultimate Irish goodbye. I thought that was awesome. I mean, yeah, would he have stayed? He's 12-0. He's going to be playing for a national title. This thing happened quick, just probably because he didn't feel he was going to. Yeah, Mike's USC shirt. I'm sorry, Mike. And it happened quick. I mean, it's the Lincoln Riley. It's you got major jobs out there. Obviously, Florida. Now you got Oklahoma. You got some major jobs, and I mean LSU. real quick, I mean, with the last 3 coaches at LSU have won a national title. He's got to be sitting back there. He's beat Ogeron when he was at SC as the interim. He's
I'm just
he
kidding.
beat him, obviously he beat him in a bowl game. He's going to be like, that guy won a national title. I got to win a national title. And I think this move is 100%. He wants to win a national title, put it on his resume. He's tired of people talking about his 2 national titles at Grand Valley State. And he probably thinks I've worked my tail off for Notre Dame. I've built this thing since the mess of 4-8.
Mm-hmm.
Let the next guy see what he could do.
Irish goodbye or not, he did do Brian Kelly's legacy. I think at Notre Dame will be someone that did rehab the program. He did have it went down for a little bit under halfway through his term, but
Great.
I think that they're right there. I mean, there's a lot of college programs that would love to be a team, get handled by Clemson or not, get handled by Alabama or not, would love to have 2 playoff appearances on their resume over the last 4 years.
Yeah, that's as much as this stings and kind of like, I mean, Greg, you're a Notre Dame grad. Tim, your wife graduated from Notre Dame. Like, I don't have those same connections, and I'm still kind of pissed, But this is going to wear off, And Greg, I think that's kind of going to be the thing that you remember Brian Kelly for when you're sitting at a bar 15 years from now. I threw on a 3rd shirt. Now I'm getting its Tar Heel blue. I think I'm wearing close to the same color as these guys next to me, but I can't win. I saw a comment saying throw on a green shirt. I don't think my green shirts fit me anymore, and I can't comment on 5 Notre Dame shirts. I will never wear a Notre Dame.
Yeah,
shirt.
we can't be that. We choose not to be that blatant. I have no.
Yeah, I don't want to be a
but they don't. I don't wear them for the show.
So Kyle Hamilton, quick update, was speaking on former Notre Dame running back Mick Asaf's, we mentioned earlier, a Twitter space, which is basically like a live podcast via Twitter. Here's what Hamilton had to say. This is via tweet from Patrick Engel, our beat writer, says, "Congrats to Coach Kelly. Want to thank him for everything he's done for me." Hamilton also spoke on Marcus Freeman's potential as Notre Dame's next head coach and said, "If that is true, I'm all for it. He has been great this year." So quick little note there. Not that Hamilton's going to be around for this next year. But I mean, Greg, we talk about all the time the blueandgold.com message board, like the grass is greener on the other side kind of situation. Well, a lot of Notre Dame fans have been like, small majority, or a minority, I should say, he's not going to win a national championship. We need to get rid of him and go find the guy who does. We're going to see, if it does revert back to Willingham and Davey and Weiss days where, damn, during those days, you would have given your left nut for a 10-win season, and now they're not good enough, right, Tim?
Oh, God, yeah. Oh, I mean, it's a night and day world compared to, those 10 years. It's a night and day. I mean, you get comfortable. This is the Notre Dame effect. The late great Louis Emoji would be talking about that, where you just get you get comfortable, the malaise. This goes back. I mean, the first thing I thought about, I texted Greg this feels like Lou Holtz when Lou Holtz left. Now he left, abruptly and all that, but he left because that 1996 team was loaded.
Yeah,
that team was going to win the national championship, and they stubbed their toe at home against Ohio State. And Lou Holtz talks about when they lost Air Force in the overtime game. In overtime, and they lost to Air Force. That's when he knew he was done. Mm-hmm. And then I blame Bob Davey when they, the streak ends in 96 against SC. They're up by 8. And whatchamacallit, the old Jim Sanson. God, I'm throwing names out here. Jim Sanson misses a PAT. It would have put him up by 9. SC gets the ball and goes right down the field, touchdown, 2-pointer, win an OT. But it's a different world. It's a different world. I think it's a different world in all of college football, where the next guy is not going to just show up and chill and go golfing and do all those things. No, they're not. I mean, they're firing coaches in the middle of the season. I mean, Clay Helton got fired after 2-3 games. So I don't think the next guy at Notre Dame is coming into a heck of a football program, 5 straight double-digit wins, 2 playoffs. They played for the national title in 12. They were a field goal away in 15 from going to the playoffs. So they're there. And I think that next guy is going back to one of the super chats talking about the donors and that. I do. I think the donors are going to be dishing out cash. We need a national title.
Yeah, someone just asked, what do we think Notre Dame will pay the new head coach? Hard to say because Notre Dame doesn't release those numbers officially. I know it's believed that Kelly's in the $7 million range for total comp. I don't think they would have to pay more to elevate Marcus Freeman, and there's certainly plenty of coaches that would come to Notre Dame for $7 million. But if you're talking about getting like pulling a world shocker like a Dabo Swinney or someone like that, I think then you're talking about having to go up to where the market is. I mean,
Yeah.
10-ish, you know.
Sure. So the thing about Freeman, I'm ballparking that he's making somewhere between 1.8 and about 2.3, somewhere around there.
Mm.
So, let's say, he gets the job and let's say 3 or 4 million or somewhere in that, like that, that's the increase. That's not a $7-8 million hire. So now you have a lot more money to spend on some of those assistant coach hires. So you can have a really strong staff around a first-time head coach. I think that's worth noting, Tim.
Oh, without a doubt. I was just going to say, boom. I bet his first once again, if the walk on McCassoff is correct, he's got the inside info. I bet his first contract's 5 years, 25 mil. They're going to give him $5 million a year. I think that would be the standard right there. But I got a quick question for you, Mike, on the recruiting. Going back to recruiting and Marcus Freeman, didn't Marcus Freeman, when he came aboard, didn't he bring two office recruiting guys with him that are kind of running the show at Notre Dame?
Chad Bowden is the
Okay.
one that's fairly out there. He does a fantastic job talking to recruits. So look, I'm going to be honest with you guys. Drake Bowen, borderline 5-star recruit in the 2023 class, big time linebacker. He was essentially looking for reasons not to go to Notre Dame. That's just the truth. If he were on here right now, I think he would admit that too. He wanted to go, to the South. He wanted to play baseball in the SEC or the ACC, at a Clemson or, an Auburn, something like that. And Notre Dame and Marcus Freeman he couldn't turn those guys down. And the option to stay close to home was obviously important, but that was 100% Marcus Freeman and Chad Bowden.
Wow.
That kind of impacts. That's real. Marcus Freeman is a damn good recruiter, good leader of men. The lack of head coach experience, that scares you a little bit. And, obviously these guys have to get their first experience somewhere, typically not Notre Dame, but Marcus Freeman is one man that I would bet on for that job.
Just wanted to say thank you to Starting Three. He had a super chat a few minutes ago. I had put up on the screen here. Then Mike Nolan also dropping us some love with his thoughts about what he thinks the coaching staff should look like down the road. A question earlier: Do you guys think Brian Kelly was ever going to win a national championship at Notre Dame? I think for me it comes down to what we've talked about a lot: is the missing ingredient was the Notre Dame's quarterback. I always say this: Notre Dame's quarterback needs to be the best player on the football field. For Notre Dame to win a national championship, they're not going to get it done any other way.
Well, I always go back to 2012. If Kansas State didn't stub their toe and they played K-State, they would have won a national title. But as life goes, would he have gotten a national title? It comes down to offense, being more dynamic, more playmakers, all those things on the. This is offense. Look at the teams that have won it. It was arena football with LSU just 2 years ago in those playoff games with them, just chucking it all over the place. And Notre Dame needs to get those dudes on the perimeters and score a ton of points. They are tight end they're constantly getting some tight ends. The kid from Iowa, by the way, I know I texted Mike like a month ago. Holy moly, he's unbelievable. Eli Raven.
Yeah.
Oh God. Yes, get that guy right here, right now. He's so good. I love that guy. I just watched his senior film and wow. But so Notre Dame has those things already built in: tight ends, line. They got some damn good linebackers coming up and things of that nature. It's the quarterback, man. It is the quarterback.
Yeah. No, they're athletes at linebacker. We talked about this on prior recruiting shows, Mike. There's going to be an upgrade, Notre Dame fans, at that position. Not that the current linebackers aren't doing a great job, but get ready to see guys who are longer and faster at that
And
position if they can
and
hold
not
on to
that
them.
and not that the Notre Dame quarterbacks have done a bad job, because obviously Ian Book was an all-timer at Notre Dame. Jack Cohn has been very serviceable to just put it lightly.
Yeah.
But
Mhm.
it's just, this is what I always go back to the truck, the truck or
Trailer.
trailer, thing. I mean, that quarterback, he has to be the truck, because Notre Dame's skill players are just not at the level of an Alabama or a Clemson or LSU when they're on top of the college football world. So you have to have that elite quarterback to bring those guys along with you. But you know, I mean that's just kind of what it's going to take.
Well,
Kayas, thank you for the super chat, by the way. Here he was just mentioning something we talked about earlier. Tim, go ahead.
no, I was going to say that's going back to what I mentioned earlier, just talking about Notre Dame in the 80s and 90s, the quarterbacks all on the NFL rosters. And and I brought this up before. I think when me and Mike did a video way back when talking about the receivers, which is just puzzling to me because Notre Dame, since Brian Kelly's been there, has had a lot of receivers in the NFL. I mean, there's been a lot of dudes playing in the NFL that have played under Brian Kelly,
Mm-hmm.
and even before him, Golden Tate and things, and other guys back then. How how have they not been able to go out and get some just freaks every year? I mean,
Right.
basically, one whole class is just gone from what is that, the 18 class? That's just basically gone. A
Mm-hmm.
whole group of receivers, and now if they're going to lose, Walker, Williams, they keep Merriweather out of Washington, and then you got to go arm wrestle all those seniors that have an extra year of eligibility and beg those guys to come back. And if Marcus Freeman's the head coach, you better get those guys in a room and say, we have no wide receivers next year. You can't play with 6 tight ends, unless they're going to run the single wing and do what old Frank Leahy did in the 40s. I don't know.
Officer Brimley asks, how are the LSU fan base reacting to the Kelly news? I looked at TigerDetails.com is the name of our LSU home on the Rivals Network. I looked at their board about 2 hours ago. First, people got to understand, Brian Kelly beat LSU twice in bowl games, and people down south, the SEC, who grew up watching Notre Dame winning national titles without getting a crack at them, they really don't like Notre Dame. And I would say that
Oh,
for a lot of LSU fans, they are like, the Notre Dame head coach, and then they start thinking about, they read more and more about how he rehabbed the program. I don't know if LSU necessarily needs a rehab. They just need to have competence at their head coaching position because I think the athletes are there. But it's kind of like mixed, long story short. They're not jumping up and down, and I don't think it was necessarily something that was on their radar either.
Yeah, I'm looking at Tiger Details right now. Thread Kelly will do great here, and then one that says effing awful.
Yeah.
So and I was reading that thread. It seems like most of the LSU fans are coming in support of Kelly a little bit. So I think you're right. It's somewhere in the middle. Yeah, as things naturally are, as Loose Emoji always said. Yeah, so I think it's somewhere there. Yeah. What about this comment? Any chance they get
Yeah.
PJ Fleck?
I'm
What do you think,
surprised.
Greg?
I'm surprised his name isn't mentioned more. I think he's done a better job at Minnesota than Matt Campbell's done at Iowa State. I mean, I think Minnesota, if you look at, I mean, both are tough in terms of recruiting. They don't have great in-state talent, nor are they bordered by states with great talent. So their backs are against the wall in both. But I think the success PJ Fleck's had in the Big Ten is more impressive to me than what Matt Campbell's done in the Big 12. I'm just not a big believer in the Big 12, so I don't know.
I like PJ Fleck. I think PJ Fleck's heck of football. Uh, he went undefeated at Western Michigan, for crying out loud. He had College Game Day show up to Western Michigan
Yeah,
for a game. He could coach. He could recruit. He's got, he recruits his tail off. That's a worker bee. Maybe just something about PJ Fleck and the Notre Dame donors and things like that. Is it going to be row the boat meets Our Lady on the Dome and things of that nature? They don't want to hear, but PJ Fleck could coach. There's no doubt about that. He's a heck of a football coach. Very surprised he has not been out there at some of these major jobs. But I think Minnesota just gave him another extension this past week, if I remember right reading. So, he's got a ton of energy. He would definitely be a heck of a guy if he's sitting in front of a family. Someone's going to listen to him and things of that nature. But, the row the boat is awesome. Believe me, his whole message is unbelievable. I was part of a coaching clinic this past spring, and he was the guy spoke for 2 hours. Unbelievable speaker, and his story and everything about him is awesome. It does sell well. He would win at Notre Dame.
Yeah, I think he'd do a good job. Ed Royal, thank you for the super chat. He asked who will coach the bowl game, college football playoff game, and says, in my opinion, Lou Holtz is by far the best option. Probably a little more shocking than Bob Stoops being the interim coach for Oklahoma at the time, but who knows? I mean,
well, hey, does Oklahoma have any players for a bowl game? I mean, they've already got. I mean, they have players already in the transfer portal in the last 24 hours. So they may be taking the field with like 48 guys.
Yeah.
So who knows? I'm not worried about Oklahoma, but as far as the Notre Dame, I mean, are they going to wait? Are they going to wait for Luke Fickell? Are they praying? Are they going to pay off the refs, call out a holding call so Houston wins that game? I mean, who knows?
Yeah. Let me make a correction here. I meant more in general with the SEC, Boris, not specifically LSU. Notre Dame actually played LSU in the 90s as well. They played them once in the Independence Bowl, played once down at LSU, and then that crazy game they had in, 98 against them in Notre Dame Stadium with all the missed kicks and the back and forth. Yep. So more speaking about, there is a feeling amongst SEC fans that they had many teams back in the middle of the century all the way up through the 80s that were the best teams in the nation, and all the eyes were on the Notre Dames and the Michigans and kind of elsewhere in the country. So there's just, trust me, covering recruiting, there's a lot of people that really don't like Notre Dame down in that part of the country. And so I think that them hiring Brian Kelly was like a little bit of at first.
I think Alabama claims the 66 title because they went undefeated. Notre Dame won it, so Alabama may still claim that one because they're so bitter when they had Kenny Stabler and they didn't win the national title. That was that Namath, I forget. But they claim the 74 title. Notre Dame beats them, yet they still claim it. So the South is going to claim whatever they can away from Notre Dame.
Lane Kiffin. Lane Kiffin is pure fun to me. He's just, first, he's a great offensive mind. But I think that he's more inclined to be in the SEC in the Southeast. I know he's been out West, obviously, with the USC, but
he's a different guy than he was. I've been around him, obviously coaching out in Los Angeles. I was around Pete Carroll just nonstop all those years, had inside access, stuff like that. One of the programs I was at was where Sarkisian was at. So we used to hang out a lot and do football. I've been around Kiffin a ton. Kiffin he hated to be around people, it felt like. He was one of those anti-shake hands guys and stuff like that. So he's a night and day compared to what he was during the Carroll eight years. He's definitely grown.
Mike, what do you think? Should we wrap this up? Or you got
I got to get back in here, guys.
We got to get going too. I'm sure there's more to write. So.
Oh yeah, no, I got a crap ton more to do tonight. First of all, the timing of this, I'm curious what you think, Greg, being in this industry for 2 decades like you have. Do you just rush to get this hire done before National Signing Day, or do you just say, 2022 class, does this kind of suck, and wait until after signing the December signing period to go get a Luke Fickell or somebody? What are your thoughts, Greg? Because I'm kind of torn on that.
If I'm Jack Swarbrick, I'm trying to find trusted people in the recruiting office that will give me an honest answer on how many of the players they feel are threats to leave. Because if you're talking about what they've got 23 commitments, if you're thinking 15 of them are gone, that's a real problem. You need to rush. I think you need to get something. You need to get them an answer sooner than later. If you are more confident that they're committed to Notre Dame because it's Notre Dame. And again, you and I talked about this in our video earlier today, Mike. Most Notre Dame commitments are inclined to go to Notre Dame because of Notre Dame, not because of a coach. Then you could say, all right, let's make sure we make the right decision. But 2 different scenarios. I think Notre Dame and Oklahoma are in 2 completely different scenarios as it relates to how they maintain their current list of commitments with an open job vacancy.
Hey, real quick off that, Greg and Mike, is now that Notre Dame's down a coach, the AD can, consider himself a coach and make calls. I know that's ADs do that all the time whenever a coach leaves. So that's a great point about going to the recruiting office. Who are the people I need to talk to? Because Dr. Jack's allowed to get on the call and make some calls. So who are those guys? Who's locked in? Who's solid? And I'm sure, when we're done with this, jump on Twitter. I'm sure there's going to be tons of retweets from all the recruits on what they're saying and things of that nature if they're solid. So Notre Dame's, Mike says it perfect. 90% of these dudes, they're going to Notre Dame for Notre Dame.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I agree. Well, guys, let's wrap it up. I know, Mike, you've got a lot of stuff to do. We'll be up through the night and probably very early the next morning as well. Once again, Brian Kelly, per report, started by Pete Thamel at Yahoo Sports and reported everywhere else now, but of course at this late at night. Brian Kelly's gone. He's going to LSU, and Notre Dame currently has a vacancy for the head football coach of its football program. Everyone, thank you for tuning in. Once again, subscribe to our YouTube channel, and we appreciate you, and we'll probably see you tomorrow with another live show of some sort.
You got it.